It's a Friday morning in late July, although you'd never know it, as off we go on another tributary adventure. Today it's Spencer Creek, source to mouth. Ross Davies here to bring you this really cool little Kanaka Creek tributary, which starts around here, that being Jackson Avenue, 102nd Avenue. There's a lot of groundwater there. And as the wheels on the bus go round and round, so will we. We'll look at the start of the creek right there. And a feature that's near here, across the street, is Jackson Farm. And there was a really cool land deal made where some development happened in exchange for the farm being given to the city of Maple Ridge in perpetuity. So we're pretty pleased about that. It's got a really good connection with the forests of Albion Park. So off we'll go and take a look at Spencer Creek. We're now into Albion Park. Here's our first look at the creek itself. Not much of any flow, but keep in mind it is the end of July. Here's this little off channel that the city put in some years ago. You got some large woody debris there. A little bit of a closer look. Head over to the right, there's the rest of it. Now a bit of an algae bloom going on, and what else is new. So not really, actually not at all, summer habitat for fry. The winter is probably a different story. I can tell you though, we have documented over on this side of the trail both Pacific chorus frog and red-legged frogs as well. We're well inside Albion Park now. We've got Spencer Creek right in front of us. Fairly decent flow for the end of July, although there's been more rain than most this summer, that's for sure. And we look downstream towards what I call the Grand Canyon of Spencer Creek. Look at all the fallen debris in there. Some of that was deliberately placed, others have come down in storms. And you get a lot of windfall in this forest. So that's pretty good cover, really good habitat. And a decent flow to Spencer. Speaking of falling trees, my students and I have been examining this standing sort of wildlife tree for years, and at some point in the recent past it decided it wasn't going to stand anymore. So there it is. At some point we'll probably have to get it off the trail, but the rest of it will just kind of leave where it is. Anyone that's attended Sammy Robertson School in something like the past million years, actually since January 2006, will recognize this spot. This is where we come with the students to sample the water, temperature, pH, occasionally turbidity, but usually not, because the water is normally as clear as glass as it is today. So a little bit of history of the way this monitoring program got started. In 2005, a lot of development happening above us, above Jackson Avenue, and a lot of suspended sediment / turbidity in this creek, and it was almost devoid of life. So Samuel Robertson came on board in January 2006. The students began sampling the water. We made the results public, posted them online, and City of Maple Ridge took a look, and it was like, up Periscope, and they took quite a leading role to clean up these developments. We ended up having a multi-stakeholder sediment control workshop a couple years after that. And that really drove the way to some really good bylaws and watercourse protections. So my hat is tipped off for sure to Samuel Robertson students. So the creek went from a problem child to pretty much a poster child, and it led to some exciting things that we'll see downstream. We mentioned Samuel Robertson School. Well, there it is, and right on the school grounds. This is not Spencer Creek here, but this is a little tributary to it, and it's actually what's called a scrubber marsh. You never even know it's back there now. But it was originally put in to filter water that was coming off developments upstream. And it does a marvelous job. We've tested the water quality in here. It's fantastic. We've documented northwestern salamander as well as Pacific chorus frog in here. So if you'll forgive me shooting through the chain link fence, we're down at 104th Avenue. We've exited Albion Park. And we get our first look at just how big and wide the riparian ravine really is on this watercourse. Ross with you, Friday morning, Spencer Creek, and there it is. And get a load of this. When 104th was originally built, the fish access was cut off by an impassable drop off the end of a culvert that was right down there. A few years ago, a consulting company came in and built this fishway, a series of small steps that is a piece of cake if you're a young cutthroat trout or coho salmon. So that has reintroduced the fish to Albion Park and points beyond. We've actually documented cutthroat trout ourselves up there, and we've seen coho salmon fry as well. We have descended until just downstream of 240th Street, looking at Spencer. Gradient is starting to level out a little bit as we approach Albion Flats. And let me assure you, this year 2020 is a shoo-in for the Mosquito Hall of Fame, and that's been the case pretty well everywhere we've been this summer. 3 peaks on the Fraser and off to the races it went. So we'll catch up with you momentarily down below Albion Flats. We're west of 240th now, and the creek crosses 104th Avenue for a second time. There's a little nice notch in that log down there. See if we can get a better look at it. There you go. Now, Spencer Creek has a total of 3 access improvements on it. We saw the fishway further up by Samuel Robertson School. There is a second one that was just down below from where our last stop was. There was no way I was going to go in there. The mosquitoes will kill you, even with bug dope. There's a third one too that we'll see as we approach the confluence. But first things first, we'll keep on going. But it just occurred to me though that so many times, right, where you have a creek that starts to recover, it generates interest, success breeds success, and it's led to these restoration projects. Let's go look at another one. So we covered this in another video earlier this year, back in the spring, I think, but this part of Spencer has been restored. The channel was reconfigured. A bunch of wood debris and all kinds of things were planted. You'd never know it now. There's some development in the background. Over to the right are the empty, at least for the moment, Albion ball fields. We've mentioned elsewhere that Kanaka Creek watershed is really short of off-channel pond habitat. Here's one exception, this pond area near Planet Ice, which is over to our right. We're on this Friday morning. Things are just ducky, and it does provide good habitat for waterfowl. We've seen things like mergansers, wood ducks, and whatnot in here. Also in here are red ear slider turtles. I don't see them today. It's not warm enough for them to bask. So if you have an exotic pet in your home, make it a forever home. Don't get sick and tired and let it loose in the wild. It can cause all kinds of problems. They're invasive and they outcompete our native western painted turtles. As we head down closer to the mouth of Spencer Creek. We're just off of Jim Robson Way, of course the voice of the Canucks since time began kind of thing. And looking in this canary grass, hidden down there is Spencer Creek. And I mentioned in a previous video that during the summertime the flow is too slow, oxygen's too low, it might get a little too warm. But you know what, during fall, winter, and spring, it is just fantastic place for coho fry to be. We've documented coho fingerlings in here all the way up through to the end of May, which means they're accessing the creek from the confluence at Kanaka Creek, which is fantastic. So we look at Albion Flats, all the way across Spencer Creek on this Friday morning as a crow says hello. Of course, I should make mention as well is that we're very, very close to the level of the Fraser River here. So this area has control by a pump station, which we're going to look at shortly. And it's subject to flooding. I remember autumn, where it was close to Halloween, there was a show happening over there called Ghost Ridge. And we get some beaver activity down here in this part of the creek. So the beavers, just in time for a big fall rainstorm, decided to plug the creek up and back the water up and flooded out the joint something awful. They had to close the whole thing down. As we look at a type of spirea known as hardhat. Ross back with you. We've arrived at the mouth of Spencer Creek. There, of course, is Kanaka, Chloe Highway number 7. It's Friday morning, and what the heck do we have here? Well, I mentioned previously, the flows in and out of Spencer Creek are controlled by a pump station, and we talked about that success breeds success business, about the creek came back to life, started to generate more enthusiasm. Well, along came a retrofitted fish pump, or pump station that's fish friendly, so they don't get chewed up anymore. We have documented both adults and juveniles that have made it through here, up to, for that car to get out of the way, the other side there. So let's take another look back here. Unfortunately, most of it's submerged right now, but you can see this thing run usually in the fall on a big, huge winter tide, a big fall storm, something like that, and it works quite well. So we hope you've enjoyed this look the story of, and I'm going to let you know a little secret, of all the tributaries in the Kanaka Creek watershed, you know what, Spencer's my favorite. It's the little stream that could. It was forgotten, it was given up for dead, and it's come all the way back from the problem child to the poster child. Quite proud of the job that's been done on this little creek. So Ross Davies saying so long, wishing you a fantastic weekend from Spencer Creek.